Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our first session of Implementing AI for Social Innovation Series. My name is Coral, and today I'm your host for the session. Today we're going to be speaking about AI, a deep dive into sustainability, entrepreneurship, and ethics. I'm really excited about this session and the one to come next week as well, that I will tell you a bit more in a few seconds, because we've been preparing this topic for a really long time, and now we have the possibility to really implement it through this meetup series. But first of all, who we are and why we are here today. So I'm from Nextcoder. We are Nextcoder, the organization creating this meetup series. What we do is to work with technology, to work with entrepreneurs, and also to work with software development and impact. So in our vision of sustainable world and also a world where technology play a really great role, all these topics such as sustainability, impact, and also AI take place. This is why we were so excited about creating a meetup series where we can bring all these people together, all the stakeholders and everyone working in the different fields, to basically create a space for them to meet and to connect. So here it is. This is the essence of this series. What we want to do is to create a space for the people, not only to develop solutions, but also to connect with the right ones, to also understand the technology, to understand the potential, to basically create bridges between all these people that might be interested, and maybe even they don't know yet, but they have a huge potential through these technologies that is yet to come. And to do so, we're going to do these two events. They are going to be running this year. So for next year, we are preparing more. But so far, we have this online meetup. This is our kickoff today. Really short, brief day, but also the day where we want to know who is out there, who you are, and not only tell you about what we want to do, but also we want to understand what do you need and where we can go together. And today we're going to collect a few learnings, some ideas, and we are going to bring also those ideas into next week when we are going to be meeting here at Spielfeld, that is our offices. And we expect also to all of you to join us in person. So we're going to be meeting next Wednesday, the 13th, from 6 to 9. And we are going to have also a panel discussion, a really inspirational keynote, and some networking sessions that we also expect that they are really useful for you to connect with the right people. To move forward with this meetup series, and what I was just mentioning is the vision that we have. So there's like three main pillars here: speak, understand, and apply. We think that it's really important that more and more people start speaking about artificial intelligence, that people that maybe are not really related to technology, they start speaking about the possibilities that this technology brings to them. And to do so, they need to understand it. Of course, it's really complex. We are at the beginning of everything that is yet to come. And to basically arrive or reach those goals that we have in mind, we need to understand what is the potential of this technology. We don't need to go at the beginning like really big. We need to understand all the possibilities step by step and all the capacities that we can have through the technology that artificial intelligence will bring us. And last but not least, what I just mentioned is the application of it. We need to understand when it's needed, if it is really needed, in which capacity, and basically to understand the possibilities that we can have when, for example, we are an entrepreneur, even if we are a sustainability or social entrepreneur, how we can start applying AI. But enough about me, and now I want to hear also about you. So I want to know the people who are in the room right now. We are gonna launch, let's see if we can see it now. We are gonna launch this Slido. So please go to Slido, come and use this code, or scan with your phone just this QR code really easily and quick. We can all access together. And you are going to see in a second, let me see, the first question there. So what is your working area? You have seen what we do, what we want to do with this meetup series, and now we want to know what is your background, what areas you are working in, how is artificial intelligence related to your job, and if you start also including there your responses, we will see also in a few seconds. Marketing and communication, mobile developer, software development, yeah, really good. It's tech, marketing, nice. It's really good because also like how we envision this is, okay, how we can bring this tech war, right? And the social and entrepreneurs, and how we can bring together all of them and find a purpose for everyone. So cybersecurity, interesting. Product development, great. Okay, so really nice. Thank you so much for giving your answers. Are there a few more popping up there? Okay, good. UX design, sustainability management. Happy to hear that one too. All good. Thank you so much for your voting. Don't put your phones away. We're going to have a few more questions. And of course, we are going to later collect all these answers to better understand our audience and how we can move from here. Let's move into today's agenda. So today's objectives are basically three. We want to understand the role that AI can have into sustainable development. Of course, this is huge. This is really big, and there is a lot to be done. But we want to start the conversation with the specific examples that we are going to see also with our speakers today. We are going to uncover the potential that AI can have into the social entrepreneurship. I think this is really interesting for also for professionals working into technical areas, and what they can do with their skills, right? What is the potential that those skills can have when applying them into social projects. And of course, we are going to be speaking about AI and ethics, because when all come together, there is so many questions that we need to ask ourselves, so many things we need to consider when developing this technology. And of course, when it comes the social entrepreneur part, we need to see that also these entrepreneurs, this type of projects, they are really ethical. Usually they consider things that maybe the business as usual wouldn't have considered in the past. And that's why we think this is so relevant today, and also we want to have a look at it. And to do so, we're going to have three wonderful experts today. Malte Will, Anna Maria Brunnhofer-Pedemonte, and Jonathan Moore. So each of them are going to bring us some light into each of the topics. And first of all, we are going to be starting today with Jonathan, who is our Nextcolor co-founder. So I can see you now. Hello, Jonathan. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking part in this initial presentation in this quick meetup that we are running today. I think it's really important that also you are here, because in this way we can also put out there the vision of Nextcolor and make the people also understand what is our background and where we are coming from, right? So I think we can better start if you tell us a bit more about who you are, what you do at Nextcolor, and how you are here today.
Cool. Well, I'm Jonathan, and I'm the warm-up act. No, actually, I'm the CTO of Nextcolor, so it's very aligned with what we do to discuss these topics. We're really interested in the intersection of the cutting edge of technology with social impact here. So personally, I've been working a little bit with these projects over the last year, and also with AI projects, that is. and also in the general field of trying to find the leveraging the latest technologies, let's say, for startups, social entrepreneurs, NGOs, and that's part of our mission at Nextcoder. So yeah, so happy to be kicking off the program with you guys.
Nice. Well, let's jump then into speaking about AI. And well, as we know, AI is a really broad topic, as I have been just mentioning a few minutes ago. But I would like to know a bit more about your daily work. What are the topics from AI that are more relevant to you in your day-to-day working?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, as I mentioned before, there's one thing is sort of knowing exactly what's possible, you know, so the big models and what they can do from the big platform providers, right? That's one thing, and what's happening on the cutting edge of research is another thing. But the main focus for us is really what practically can be done. What can developers get their hands on right now, and product designers, UX designers, and so on, to build products that actually use this technology somehow to achieve the impact goal. So things like chatbots that can co-pilot your repair project, or things like energy consumption analysis, and anything where there's, or API for, it could be even just marketing efforts where you need to generate content or video. Let's say your budget's tight and you need to generate a video based on a blog post. This technology is now becoming more and more available. So being aware of that, so we can give the best advice, and we can also support implementation on that side. And then on the other hand, yes, this ethical concerns, staying up to date, things we'll talk a bit more about, I'm sure, during the course of this session. But basically, you know, are there aspects such as bias, aspects such as accuracy, disinformation, and so on, and also just generally the way the market works in terms of access to data and how open it is, and whether other players can come into it. So that's interesting for us as well. Whether, especially with governmental funding and NGO projects, is sort of like how do they make technical choices in general that will support a sort of rich and diverse economy for AI? So those are the things we deal with mostly.
Like really, really broad, as I mentioned. Like there's so many things, right? Like that are being developed. Everything is happening so fast, so quick. So we need to take decisions really fast as well, because it's like it needs to happen. It needs to happen now. And then when we are speaking about AI and ethics, how can we be sure that we are making the best decisions when developing it, since we need to take these decisions so quick? How or what we need to consider when making these decisions in this moment that we are living?
Well, I mean, who are we talking about? If we're talking about, are you talking about us making the decisions, or as a society? If that's the case, then it's really about things a bit like the risk is basically the legislation and regulation and any kind of, or even just best practices, miss vital things, vital risks that are emerging, and they come quickly, and they're somehow skipped. You can look at it in terms of social media a little bit, and with the Digital Markets Act and some work that's been done now on interoperability. This is happening in 2023 for something that emerged in 2010 or something. So it's like it's taken them years to get up to speed. However, you see the AI Act is pushing, or regulations on AI are being pushed for a bit quicker. So maybe they're not repeating the same mistakes. But yeah, it's about, we don't want to repeat the sort of delay we had with social media regulation. We want to make sure that we're on top of it. And then obviously the actual responsibility needs to be put in the hands of those wielding these tools, as it were, to do that. I mean, yeah, there's also this idea of with the regulation should enrich the economic progress. So in terms of the businesses that are supported, it's not all about these huge giant players, and rather there are open source and smaller companies that can access this stuff. So there's other legislation, not just about sort of controlling in terms of compliance or anything like that. It's actually also about promoting smaller players and somehow incentivizing and allowing better access to compute and data. That I think needs to be done to avoid this sort of monopolistic stagnation you get if a couple of big players have access and sort of control it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jonathan, because you just mentioned one example as social media is being regulated years after, but we see that also AI is developing much quicker, right? And how can we be sure that the right decisions are being taken on time? What are the consequences if we don't make those decisions on time?
Yeah, I mean, the consequences are then that we end up with a sort of the closed walled garden of AI, or rather, that's the most tame consequence, right? Where it's hard to, where the actual tools can only be accessed through kind of expensive relationships potentially with service providers, right, or tie-ins at least. And the risk is then that we also don't know what we're giving up, right? So we don't know if we're giving up sort of data privacy. We don't know if we're giving up our, the future that we could have if we had more diversity of development, right? So those are things I think are at risk beyond the kind of sensational things you hear about, but yeah. Like runaway AI, or actually the one, the thing we might also touch upon is obviously the job market, the impact on the market and things like that, those kind of risks. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that.
Yeah, interesting. Also, I think it's a lot to be done, right? And a lot of regulations that need to take place. And one of the things that I would like to also mention today with you is about bias. Is one of the things that regulations also will need to be aware of, and also understand, considering that those models are being trained with biased information, right? How can we avoid also that AI is being trained or developed in a biased way?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think I'm not an expert on this and all the approaches. I'm not aware of everything that's going on, but I mean, you can think of it like us learning a language. When you go, if you hang out with some people, you'll learn it in a certain way, right? You'll learn certain terms of phrase and expressions, and you'll start to sound like the way they sound. And I think it's a bit like, if we did that as humans, we would be able to perhaps adjust that, as we learn more, and change it. And with some of these earlier examples of AI, there was just very clear biases in them. Some quite striking profiling for image recognition and so on that was, I think, was a few years back. And then more recently, sort of some of the text generative models have had also been in the news. It's the same for similar, well, sort of less controversial things, let's say, but still biased. And yeah, I think they may be getting better at fine tuning and better at using techniques to alleviate this post after the initial training of the AI. However, in the end, it's the data you put in that you get out, right? So you can try to control the balance of your data, right? That's one thing you can try. And the other thing is, I mean, what what strikes me is, well, a question actually to anyone in the room who wants to answer it at a later point would be, are there drives to maybe allow more, sort of introspection into data being used by the big models? So, for example, can someone actually go and analyze the training data that's being used for ChatGPT and say, okay, we've certified that this is actually already, is not unbiased in some way, but that's as far as my awareness of the topic goes.
Yeah. There's so many things that I think we need to solve, and we still don't have the answers yet, right? Like we just spoke about bias, but one other big topic I would like to address with you today is about our jobs and the future. It's like this big question that we have in front of us is like, will AI take our jobs? How ethical is that, right? I think it is the big elephant in the room. What's your vision on that?
Yeah, partly who am I to judge? But in a way, I mean, the sense I get from it, at least personally, is that it's a bit like automation in many industries in the past, but much faster. So there'll just be, and also slightly different. It doesn't approach the sort of manual labor type jobs of the past. Rather, it's transitioned to now creative sector. I mean, there's the sort of even in the music industry, for example, there's this whole thing going around about voice models, reusing people's voices and being able to, so it could be that in the end you generate the voice, so you don't need to hire the singer, right? And things like that. So that's the crux of it. And the question is, can we do it in a gradual way to adapt? That's really kind of that's kind of critical. Yeah, so that's all I can really say about it. I don't have a really clear answer, and maybe some of the other experts here can say.
Yeah, we can later also see what the audience think about that. No, I think it's really important we address this topic. Of course, we don't have a final answer yet, but it's important also to see people working in this field. What is your vision? How you envision this, right? I would like to close today with you with one really important question that is addressing the topic that we are developing through this meetup series, and it's about the social economy, right? Like the world is moving into a more social economy, and how can we be social using AI? How can we be sure that AI is being developed for the right purpose?
Yeah, in the way we use it, I think, and in the way that small to medium enterprises use it, I think one thing is that we don't really know about the externalities yet. So we don't really know side effects of what we're doing. So one thing is being social, the other thing is just not being antisocial, right? So so looking for things that would be negative and removing them. We need frameworks for that. We need to look at the obviously, as we mentioned before, the regulation process. I mean, in the context of the bigger players, this is definitely something we need the big blocks to regulate a little bit. And as I said, yeah, like the Digital Markets Act and other things, similar things need to come in for AI around the kind of ethical side. And I think there's a lot of the huge emerging growth going on in the whole economy for the whole AI ethics space. So I think that's good that there's more resources being poured into it, and it should help us to produce more ethical and more socially beneficial AI. The other thing is, in the end, it's like a tool. So we will end up with, just like with any tool, the wielder can be doing something malicious with it, right, or illegal. And as long as the actual wielder of the tool is accountable and traceable, then we should be able to prevent that, or to mitigate that, or to find them and do whatever we have to do. But if and that means basically, but generally, yeah, that means that that we need to make sure that there's sort of accountability in the whole thing.
A lot to be said and a lot to be discussed. I think like we are not gonna find the final answers today, right? But I think it's good that we set up the right tone in the room, and also the tone for our following speakers. But anyway, I would like to say that you will be also with us in the meetup next week in person. So definitely, if people are watching now and they want to continue this conversation, they need to join us next week. So thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your time. I would like now to continue to our next speaker. And before doing that, I would like to first share my screen briefly with you and share our next question. So I would like to all of you, please go back to your phones. If somebody new joined recently, you just can scan the Slido code again and also start seeing these new questions. So according to the United Nations, the core principles lay out on a human rights centered approach to the ethic of AI, speaking about ethics. We would like to know today, what are the core principles that are more relevant to you and your work? So you can start the voting. Let me see. Right now we are getting the first votings. Let's see how it goes. Numbers are moving. So you can select more than one. I think that that should be possible. And then in this way, we can also see what are the options out there for you, what is more relevant, what is more related to your work. Because it's also interesting for us to know from our audience what are the topics that are relevant in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day work. So we can also develop further meetups in that direction. Yeah, I see numbers moving up and down. We see it's a long list because, as we say, they are 10 core principles. But here we have a few getting more votes than others. Interesting. So we have right to privacy and data protection, transparency and explainability, and a fair position, awareness and literacy. Really, really interesting. So thank you so much for your voting. And now we are moving to our next speaker, who is Malte, Head of Social Impact Partnership at Google, who is going to be speaking today about building for a better tomorrow. So let's go. Let's find among the participants Malte in here, and then we can see him. Hi, Malte. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Very good. Thanks for the invite. Thank you so much. Yes, I think interesting problems that our generation has to face. One thing that I particularly like about this and the conversation that we are having is when problems are really big, kind of forces a very different mindset. And I think there's like a couple of examples that you could think of. Like if you ask someone to like make an engine like 10% more efficient, it's like you're getting like the really good people who build an engine together and ask them like, how can you make it better, slightly more efficient? Whereas if you say like, can you make it 10x more efficient, then you kind of have to start from scratch. And I think that's often the beauty of doing those really big things. And personally, I don't know about you, I've seen a lot of people in my own little bubble, like through LinkedIn and like other networks and like industry events, where like, oh wow, this woman, she kind of did this kind of job. Now she's really into like climate tech and is like really moving the needle there. And I think that's just, despite all the somewhat negative connotation of news across the world, that's the beauty, to see amazing people out there who are trying to focus on those things. So with that, when it comes to like climate and sustainability, since I work at Google, I guess my lens is certainly biased in the sense that we think about how can tech solve all these problems, and in particular, and thanks Jonathan for kind of the opening on that and setting that stage. How can you apply that in a very responsible way? So in my day-to-day job, what I do is I pretty much work across the SDGs. And one problem that I think I've seen over the last couple of years, or probably since the beginning of technology being invented or used, is that humans have that tendency to completely overestimate the impact in the short term and fundamentally underestimate it in the long term. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, like, are we going to lose all the jobs tomorrow? No, things will probably somehow be in a transition over years and years and years. And in the short term, there's actually not a lot that AI can do. In fact, I would say, like, if someone asked, like, will AI alone save the planet? Absolutely not. It requires much more than that. And in particular, it requires people coming together, because no individual organization, no individual government, no individual international governmental organization or NGO can kind of solve it all on their own. And this is at the very core what I'm doing every day. It's like on the left-hand side, this is all the kind of people that work at Google, from software engineers and UX researchers, and some that I would consider like superheroes. With sometimes they bring their cape, sometimes they don't. And then on the other side, there's all these organizations that me and my team work with that have really interesting and really big problems to work on. And there's an intersection where we try to come together, and it's again and again really interesting to see when these two parties come together. And I would love over the next like 5 minutes to share a couple of observations that I've made along the way, and would obviously also love to get your thoughts. Again, like, these are all just observations. It's very subjective, so please challenge me on that. But I think those are things that help, if you think longer term, to establish a good basis for each and every one who is at that intersection of tech and building for humanity, social impact, and so forth. One thing that I see, especially with AI, and this is like ChatGPT and everything that is coming, AI has become this hammer that makes everything look like a nail. And people tend to come to us, and probably to many other tech companies, be like, oh, can we do the AI thing? Like, it's like, I don't understand what you're even talking about. Like, can we talk about the actual problem that you are trying to solve? And then we can talk about what a good solution could look like. It's like, we don't have to throw AI at everything just because it's a cool buzzword. There are certainly problems where AI is like really interesting. And then we need to define like what kind of AI, and like what's the context, what's the data, and so on and so forth. We talked about bias in data. So a lot of these problems. So maybe to give you one example that I find really interesting from like my own world, is when a couple of years ago we were approached by a government in the what I would call global south, a country that is heavily affected by earthquakes. And they approached us and basically said, we really need to build awareness to have people to be aware of earthquake and how to prepare for it. And can you help us with that? Like, basically, can you send notifications to everyone in our country? And when you ask that, I mean, everybody is looking for attention. And it's really hard to just say, okay, yeah, let's send notifications to everyone. That totally doesn't make sense. And it brings you in a little bit of an ethical dilemma. You say, well, we want to help the people, but we can't just go around and like send notifications on building awareness for every single natural disaster that could possibly be out there, whether it's flooding, wildfires, drought. And people would end up being so notification fatigued that they would just switch it all off and don't believe in it. So we started going back and realized that what this government was actually trying to do is compensate the lack of infrastructure to detect earthquakes. Like if you are a California-based, US-centric company, you know that your government has millions and millions to invest in that infrastructure to detect an earthquake. If you are in the global south, you may not have that money. So we started working with a couple of people within Android. And for those of you who are a little bit into hardware or know phones a little bit, pretty much every phone these days has what is called an accelerometer, which basically measures your steps and measures movement. And turns out if you kind of take your phone or take multiple phones, like millions of phones, and you have them all lying around somewhere, a earthquake can actually be detected, because an earthquake travels with two waves, one like an initial wave, and then the second one that is really causing all the destruction. So if you can measure that first wave and you connect all that, you can actually start warning people. And this is what we did. So I think it's really important to not just go and work on the solution, but like taking a step back and thinking, what is the actual problem that you're trying to solve here? And then we can talk how we can solve that from a technological point of view. A second one that I find really interesting, and that goes back to something that we often say at Google around creativity loves constraints. As in, if you don't set certain parameters, it is really hard to become truly creative in an effective way. So you want to somewhat set a framework or principles that you want to adhere to. And then within these principles, you can start working. And they need to be certainly ambitious enough, but at the same time, they also need to help you steering the direction of travel. And with all of that, you need to trust numbers, don't necessarily trust opinions. We always say data beats opinion, and you want to adhere to that. Again, to give you an example, one of these frameworks that we often use on our own team with the engineering teams and others is we want to build for things that are at the intersection of three kind of requirements. One is it needs to be a problem that is truly global, not just a specific city or a specific region. It also needs to be a problem that by and large affects humanity across the world. And the third one, and that's kind of obvious to us, is like it needs to be a problem where technology could potentially be a solution. And using that intersection as a principle, we are trying to explore all the things that are out there. One example that we launched based on that framework is when a couple of years ago, what I would say like a really brilliant engineer said, you know what, we should solve like this whole natural disaster problem. We're like, okay, that's a bit broad. Can we look at those principles and what data suggests that we should be doing? And the biggest cause of casualties at the time is flooding around the world. It's certainly a global problem, and it certainly affects humanity. And it turns out if you just have enough data, historic data from met agencies and from hydrological institutes around the world, you are able to make it a math problem that you can then compute. And so in India and Bangladesh, and now in like dozens of other countries, we have launched this flood forecasting initiative, which helps people in these regions to understand over the next 7 days, will the river rise? Like where specifically will people potentially be impacted? And like, should I leave now? Should I evacuate? And so on and so forth. So I think that's like a really interesting way of thinking of these problems. The very last principle that I actually think is the most important one is what I said initially about no one organization, no one startup, no one company or entity will ever be able to solve all these problems. It's all about working together, partnering. And when it comes to partnering, it's not organizations that actually partner, but it's people. So if you don't find that person within the other organization or within that startup that is willing to work together, it's going to be really hard. Two CEOs can shake hands. We have COP where a lot of things are being announced on like working together. And I would argue the most effective way on working together is if it's specific people who really are aligned in what they want to achieve. And the way that they can achieve something is often by building a very small thing, what we would probably all call like a minimal viable product. It doesn't have to be solving for everything. It's just like solving for one thing, demonstrating that working together helps to be successful on both ends, and then you can start growing organically step by step. So I think those are three things that I would love to kind of leave you all just as a little bit of not really provocative, but just observations. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you if we have time. I don't know how we're doing on time, on like questions, comments, whether you see other things missing. And of course, would love to kind of connect, because ideas are all out there, and I'm sure there's ways to make them come to fruition. With that, I'll pause here.
Thank you so much, Malte. That was really, really nice, really lighting. And actually, I was taking some notes of what you were mentioning, and I like these final 3 points, because actually my final three takeaways were people, real problems, and ambition. This is one of the keywords you mentioned in your talk. And yeah, I do have one question, like, are we being too ambitious with thinking like AI can change the world? Are we in the right track? What's your vision on that?
I don't think you can really be too ambitious. I think the problem is when it turns into a hype, and I think this is what I'm seeing right now. I think there's this I don't know who invented that, this kind of graph on like technology, this, I think it's the innovation cycle or something. Once you realize, or when you come to this valley of disillusionment and you realize actually like AI is not going to solve every single problem, you start to take a bit more of a differentiated approach and really understand what problems you can solve and which ones you can't. I do think that ambition is key though. And again, I feel like if you just work together, you can achieve a lot that you wouldn't even have thought about before. But AI is not the answer, and tech is not always the answer. There's many other things, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be ambitious.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so thank you for your inspiring words. Thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, hopefully we can meet you really soon in our next meetups. And yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Malte. And now we are moving to our last guest today. So we have with us, I have seen her already here, Ana Maria Brunnhofer-Pedemonte.
So, hello everyone, and thanks Malte for this very interesting talk. Really, it's I think it was a great primer also to now go into the social impact of AI and further looking at what AI can do. I liked in the end the answer, thinking about can we scale too high? Can we aim too high with AI? And I think we can't, but at the same time, we should really look at the small steps that AI and AI applications are helping us with in everyday, throughout the last years already. And that's where I come in a bit. So my topic is about scaling AI responsibly for maximum impact. That's how I would normally, let's say, do this for companies. But if you want to get very complex and if you want to think about how social impact with AI can be done, then what you have to look at is really the socio-technical impact of AI. And I think what can be done there is that you can bridge a divide through participation of people and through accountability of companies and tech. And I want you to think about how many AI applications you already know throughout the last decade, which are in your everyday life or in the everyday life of your surrounding, of your partner, of your children, grandma, and how they might have improved, even if it's a very small thing, how they have improved this everyday life. for me, at least, I have many that I can think of, and that's also the driver why I am in AI. My brother, for example, is heavily disabled, and I was among the first ones to really be online, to be an Alexa adopter, and he uses Siri every day. He has an ecosystem of Alexa to communicate with my 90-year-old grandma, and all of these small things are, to me, a very important social impact of AI. We saw this also during Corona. Being able to communicate with others is important, and with this built on NLP, this was really one of the first cases where I would say an AI application showed how it can be an equalizer. So that my, again, very heavily disabled brother, who wouldn't be able to like take a telephone and call my grandma, and my heavily disabled and my grandma who's 90-year-old, who couldn't do this either, that they find a way to communicate with each other. So socio-technical implications, very easy, kind of the word says it, it's really bringing together how the technical implication that you develop has a social impact in the world, right? So how this is interwoven. And a bit about me, why I'm talking about this. I'm Anna Maria. I'm the founder of Impact AI. And with Impact AI, we help enterprise customers to understand what impact their AI development has on their users, on the business, on various factors. And my background is a lot in HCAI, which is human-centric AI. So understanding how to design systems, AI systems, which are beneficial for the user, where the user is in the center. Just very quickly so that you understand where also this talk is coming from. So what we do there is really an AI product ops, where we help you to understand, to mitigate risks, to monitor models, right? To align with users. And we will talk about that a bit more, the AI alignment. And running through that, I think the most important is really understanding your user, understanding the impact, and reinforce the goals, and also govern, so testing, automation, but building trust also for your AI applications is a very important part of our daily doing. And looking at social impacts of AI, my thinking comes more from, again, these everyday impacts through products. And I see there are different verticals, different industries where the social impact will be the strongest. And I'm pretty sure all of you, please add in the chat if you don't agree, if you disagree, or if you want to maybe add others. So the first one I see is healthcare. Already now in healthcare, AI can really help to, on the one hand, create more efficient systems, which on the other hand also leads to potentially more people participating in a healthcare system. Thinking of areas where access to healthcare is not easy. Thinking to areas where people might have a smartphone, but not a doctor in the same village. It's really great to have, on the one hand, AI assistants helping with healthcare, or already now we see it in radiology, for example, helping doctors to better assist with the medical care. Aging is one of the topics that you might want to put under healthcare, but also helping people who need a lot of assistance. And then thinking of the next topic is education. I do see in AI, there are really amazing, there are two messages, particular AI product ops. Yeah, I will look at that later. Great. So then education, we can see that there are many vertical AI applications done, which might help students who have like learning disabilities, or might have just issues with reading and writing, which many of us might encounter in life. I myself have quite some issues with writing. I'm one of the first users of Grammarly, and I love it since then. And then also thinking of translation, also in education, but the communication throughout, just in our social existence, right? So having a translation like DeepL or Google Translate or whoever, helping you to communicate better and more profound, is a huge step and is an equalizer, how I would call it. So to me, this is a huge social impact. And this leads to the third area that I see a lot of social impact really being done. It's I would say knowledge workers that now with the help of AI, the access to be a knowledge worker and the access to maybe more white collar jobs is easier for many. I think there is some assistance for, and there's studies about it, that those who benefit from generative AI products currently, like ChatGPT, are mostly people who are just at the lower end of knowledge workers, and which means those who might have a bit less education, those who might not be the ones on the higher paid end of jobs, but really those who are in the entrance level, have to learn, or where there's just some kind of gap in education and experience. So also there, I think AI can have a huge social impact and be seen as an equalizer. So for businesses, really, again, looking at it, AI and addressing the human can create value for businesses, which is important for social impact businesses, I believe. Like, also a social impact should be addressed with some kind of value in the end, because then it just gets more traction. If you can do that, if you, for example, now want to create some social impact AI application, try to address it with euros in the end. Try to address how many minutes did I save of someone, or how many doctors did I save some hours for it, right? And give it some euros. So, and again, if you want to do that, start with having really good designs, go into evaluation and continuous monitoring of your social impact. So what does it really do? Is it just a fairy tale, or is there something that our AI here can really do better? Talking about the upsides, there are also downsides, obviously, that one has to encounter, looking at fairness, looking at bias, toxicity. These are the standard 101s that if you create social impact with AI, you really want to have these things under control, because we all know stories of where AI went wrong. Again, think of those where it went well. Think of those where it might be small ones, might not be the ones that are in the news, but you might have encountered it yourself. And think of it, okay, how do I make it really beneficial? Right. So the trust, accountability, usefulness, and usability are when you design an AI application, are the metrics that you should really think of. How can I include this in my social impact system? And then to go from scenario to metrics, you will want to go more through a value model for human, which might be a bit complex. I'm not sure what kind of mix here is in the audience currently, if there are developers here in the group, but please reach out to me anytime you want to go deeper than later. But basically with AI alignment, you really want to understand how you can have a system that is beneficial for the human and understands the value model of your human that you're serving. So which would be a user, or the one where you want to have a social impact, right? And how this as a general learning technique also is applied to the environment that you're building. And if you want to go to socio-technical level, then you would have different humans, different of these individuals that you want to create a beneficial system for, and align it with your techniques and in one environment. What's important for that, just to close, and this is really just, I guess, a brainstorming and just to get you going. But for this, my belief is it's really important that on the one hand, systems are developed in a very beneficial way with the human in the center. But on the other hand, that users, everyone, each and every group can have accessibility and does participate in AI, which means you have to give data. There is the urge for underrepresented groups to really find a way with them to input data more into the internet, even into the systems. LLMs are trained on the internet. Who is the loudest person, mostly in the internet and in the web? It's mostly not underrepresented groups of people. So this is one of the blind spots currently when you think of AI being a social equalizer or having really a social impact. It's this data from people who might not have the access and might not be the ones who normally participate. Think of your grandma again, but also think of people who do not necessarily have a laptop and a great internet connection somewhere in this world. So yeah, I said it already, try to give every impact a euro value, and I think the impact will even be bigger, and arrive at accountability, which means be sure that the social impact that you want to create with AI has a user in the end, where this user can participate, where they have access, but also where you as a creator or business define accountabilities within your teams, within your own structure. So be legal accountability, but also technical accountability. So that's it. From my end, it might have been a bit of a different talk about the social impact of AI, but I hope very interesting for you as well to still see like how I think of it from a more, let's say, AI design perspective.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for this inspiring conversation today. We do have one question actually from Jonathan.
Yes.
And we can see it here in the chat. Let me open it.
I see it, yeah.
Yeah.
So what you start with first is definitely the evaluation and testing. So evaluation and monitoring continuously with LLMs. You do that through automated prompt injection, for example. So you let, you can think of it like a penetration testing. You let it run against your models that you're using continuously. That's the start, because then you have a metrics, then you have a feedback. And then how you want to assure it when you see how you are performing. You will want to look at guardrails for output, for example. You will want to look at AI firewalls for inputs. And there are all of these technologies starting to be out there now also for LLM-based applications. And you will want to basically constrain your model to some extent. But what it starts with really is this first evaluation, monitoring, having your metrics under control. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I would love to ask you so many questions, to be honest, also even starting with your inspiring story, right? How nice is that many entrepreneurs also get inspired by personal stories or things that we live, right? So in any case, we are at the end of the session today, but I would love to continue in touch with you. So please, everyone who is interested in continuing the conversation, get in touch with Anna, get in touch with us. As I say, we're going to continue this series. So thank you so much, Anna. And now I will move into closing this session with simply one more question to the ones that you're still in the room. And we spoke today about so many topics, right? But one thing is that is safety, how safe we feel when implementing, because we are speaking about these models. What is the potential, right, of AI tools? And we also want to understand these type of tools that you can use in your day-to-day work routine. How safe you feel if you are using it to give some certain information to these tools, how you feel if you need to use it for your daily business. I think this is one of the topics we will also touch upon in the coming meetups, and this is why also we want to know a bit what is your vision there. We see things moving up and down. It's really interesting. The third option, really trust AI, is still slow, but yeah, interesting, something we can continue elaborating on in the coming meetups. Well, last but not least, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, this is just the kickoff. We are going to be doing many more of these ones. Of course, the next one is just in 1 week here in our offices. But if you want to partner with us, if you want to participate as a speaker in one of the next sessions, or you have any other idea and you would like to basically partner with us and be part of this meetup series, just get in touch with us. And we will be really, really happy to have you on board and create a lot of things that still are to come. So until here, the session of today. Thank you so much again to everyone. Hopefully you enjoy. And we see you next week. Just check our website and join to our next session. Thank you so much and see you really soon. Bye-bye.